let me start by saying Happy New Year, everyone. And I hope in the new year that we will find time to all get together in person and see what we look like below the waist. How's that? But I hope it's a very good new year. And I want to start off by thanking Tamara Green and the Walpole Media Company, who is hosting us this evening, and they're doing the recordings. And I know she's going to send it to Westwood Media and I believe Dedham Media. And I think if you would like it sent to any other local leagues, that would also be very appropriate. The League of Women Voters is, as I said, a nonpartisan organization. And what does that mean? It means that as an organization, we do not support or oppose any political party or candidate, whether that be for the President of the United States or your local school committee. But on the other hand, we're supposed to be politically active. So as members, we're to be very active politically, but not in the name of the league. The league does take action and is very active on legislation, which we have positions on. That means we've studied them, and that bubbles up from the grassroots level and goes to state or national. Tonight, we're going to be talking about state positions, and we would like our visiting representative, Kay Kahn, to speak first. And please save your questions until after she's finished. And then we have legislative specialists from the league who are working on this same issue. And Lucy Costa is with us, and I don't know if your partner in crime is with us as yet, but they will be on and would like to give us some guidance also. So if you could hold your questions until the speaking portion is over. Now, Representative Kahn is serving in her 13th term in the State House. And besides juvenile justice, she serves on a lot of committees in which we have very strong positions, i.e. women, domestic violence. You all know the drill. So Kay should be, let's make a very good friend of her, because she is very vital to league activity. So if you would all mute, as you all are, and unmute, or when you want to ask a question at the end, or you can type it in the chat. But please take it away, Kay.
I'm Representative Kay Kahn. I represent half the city of Newton, the northern half of the city. And I've been in the legislature, as Marcia mentioned, for 13 sessions. Now, I have to just say that when I began my first run for office, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And I thought, oh, maybe a couple of sessions. But I really have enjoyed it so much, and I feel like you can definitely make a difference. And so I'm delighted that I've had this opportunity, and I'm happy to be here this evening and to meet all of you. And I just think that I'm curious to know how you happen to pick this particular topic, raise the age. It's one that is actually very near and dear to my heart. And I've worked on it now for actually quite a few years.
Virginia and I were on a legislative session where this bill was talked about, and one of the sponsors was you.
Right.
And I said, gee, to Virginia, I've met Kay Kahn. And that's how it took off. But Virginia and I were particularly interested in this issue, and we thought we needed to have our members participate.
That's great. And I just want to mention that I'm a member of the Newton League of Women Voters and have been forever. So maybe you can send it to Newton, the Newton state cable station. That would be fun.
Representative Kahn,
yes.
I just wanted to let you know that the State Legislative Action Committee, we chose this as one of our top priorities for this year. And I'm one of the 2 criminal justice and court specialists for the state. And we've supported this bill as one of our priorities for a number of sessions. We just feel
Wow.
it's really important. So we're so grateful to this league for inviting you and for you to speak and for all your work.
Well, thank you. And I'm delighted to know that because so you should also know I'm also a nurse. I came into the legislature as a psychiatric nurse, clinical specialist. And so when I entered the legislature, I was interested in a lot of the human services issues. I wanted to serve on the committee for human services. And there was a woman in the legislature who was very interested in women who come into the criminal justice system. And so I actually got very involved with her, and she was instrumental in having more focus on women who are serving at MCI Framingham mostly. And so she put together a kind of a task force to take a look at the women in a more serious way. And I joined her, and I was interested. So I'm a psychiatric nurse. So I was very interested in what was happening for these women from a psychiatric perspective. And so I stayed actively involved with her and her program and things that she was doing. And then she retired from the legislature, and she handed me 12 pieces of legislation that she had been working on. And so I think in the 25 years I've been there, 26 years now, I've really, that's been a focus for me. And I've become just very active all those years in criminal justice. I had people coming to me from the outside who were worried about Bridgewater State Hospital and the mental health of people who come into the system. So it's been a focus of mine throughout my tenure in the legislature. And then I also was appointed to be the House Chair of the Committee on Children, Families, and Persons with Disabilities. And I was in that position for 12 years. And I found that really incredibly important. And I focused quite a bit on juvenile issues. And so that's how I became more involved with this. That's how I got involved with this particular piece of legislation. It's legislation that the committee, the organization called Citizens for Juvenile Justice. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but
Yes, we work with Sana Fidel very closely.
oh, okay. She's my constituent.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, no, she's great. Yeah, no, and I've been, actively involved with them for many, many, many years. And, I think one of the areas that has been of particular interest to me, and I think I kind of solidified it even more as a chair of the Committee on Children and Families and Persons with Disabilities, is how to protect youth and to really focus on the youth in our society. And I have to say, I've been extremely impressed with the Department of Youth Services in Massachusetts. It's very impressive, and I've had an opportunity to work really closely with them, and have great respect for what they've tried to do. And I think what we're all really trying to do is figure out how to engage with young people who do unfortunately come into the system. And the important piece is that they're going to go back, to society, and you want them to go back prepared for their own future. And so a lot of my efforts, I think, working with them was really to learn, who is actually coming into the system and how can we make it better. And so for me, Raise the Age was just a very important piece of legislation, because what this will do, it's hard to know where to start, where to finish, but I actually, one of the first things that I was able to do and tackled shortly after I became the chair of the committee was Raise the Age. And in fact, back in we actually were successful in 2013 and actually did raise the age, and we raised the age from 17th birthday to 18th birthday. So that meant that anybody under the age of their 17th birthday would go into the juvenile system if they got into trouble and had to be incarcerated. But if they were older than 17th birthday, they went into the adult system. And that just did not seem right at all, because you've got kids, going into the adult system with the, more serious criminals. And what good is that going to do for these young people? And so I worked really hard on raising the age at that point to at least the 18th birthday. So now kids under the age of 18 go into the juvenile system. Kids that are older than the 18th birthday go into the adult system. And I have been really interested, and I work very closely with another legislator, James O'Day from Worcester, who's wonderful to work with. And he and I have been on this path for quite a long time. And the reason that, we've been interested in raising it to a much higher age level, because we also know from a lot of work that's been done on brain development that kids don't mature until they're, the frontal lobe doesn't close until they're up to, can be 24, 25, 26. And so their level of reasoning is really incapacitated. And so these kids that are coming out of, probably, difficult family situations, they get themselves into trouble. And so I have seen from my experience in the Massachusetts Department of Youth Services that they are incredible in terms of what they can offer young people under the age of 18. Those who get into trouble under the age of 18, some of them have to stay for several years. So they're used to having kids up to the age of 22. So there are some kids that stay in the juvenile system for a long time. And I can honestly tell you, in visiting some of these lockups, it's impressive, because they really work with these kids. And I actually say this, and it's not a great thing to say, but I feel like some of these kids, if they get in to the Department of Youth Services because of whatever they've done, they're lucky, because once they get in there, they have an opportunity to really address their educational needs, their family needs, their relationships with their families, and really get a preparation for the future. And, sometimes it takes several years for that to happen with the kid, because when they end up there, they're not necessarily in a situation where they're happy to be there. But I have visited, and I can honestly tell you, one of the most amazing things to me was one of the last visits that I had. There were kids who were starting to become eligible after they have to do certain things, and eventually they can become eligible to leave the facility. They have to come back, but they can go out. And so some of them go out to school, for example, and then they come back. And they introduced me to a young kid. He's probably older. He'd been there for a while. He was going to Brandeis University for classes. It was like shocking, but they had a relationship with Brandeis. And so he would be taken over to Brandeis, and he'd sit in the classes with the other kids that were all, in the same class. And he honestly said he had never, ever thought about college. It didn't even occur to him. Never, the word didn't even come into his brain. And here he was taking college courses. And to see that is so impressive. And the one of the other visits that I made also, it was to a facility in Lowell, Massachusetts. And we had a tour, and we chatted with some of the kids, and they took us into the education room where the kids were, getting their schooling. And there were two boys in there at the time, and they spoke a little bit. The teacher was just wonderful. And he engaged them to speak about their experience. And, to hear these kids talk about how they had never gone to school. They just didn't go to school. And here they were getting their education, and how excited they were to see the faces, and how excited they were to have this opportunity. And so I just feel that we should be doing this for more kids, and giving them that opportunity, the kids that are older than 18, if they've come in at 18, before the 18th birthday. 18, most kids in high school, they're seniors in high school, they're still 18. So why aren't we thinking about that and making sure that they're well taken care of? So the bill that I filed with James O'Day, and I can give you the numbers, it was to raise the age to 19, but with the idea of going higher. when the state is ready to do that. So I just think it's such an important piece of legislation, and it makes a difference. I mean, I was thinking about it when you think about all these things that have been happening, during the holiday, with these young people going into stores and just grabbing everything they could get and running out and, just dismantling everything in these shops. I happen to have a friend who has a store in New York, and this happened to him. And, the thinking, and they're two sides, the way people think about it. But I'm a believer that if we can really prepare kids ahead of time so that they're not going to do those kinds of things, that they're going to think more about their own lives and the future for themselves, and being able to get a job and to move on. And there's some really terrific programs in Massachusetts. Besides the Department of Youth Services, there's an organization called UTEC. I don't know if you're familiar with them. You probably are. And that's another group that has been working really hard with kids who, end up in the criminal justice system. So one of the other bills that I've also been working on, and it's related to the raise the age, and that is called expungement. And it's to expunge the records of kids who have gotten into the system so that they can get on with their lives, they can get jobs. And so the expungement would put the information, lock it up, and put it away or get rid of it somehow so that it couldn't come back to haunt them. And I think that's another important piece. And I think what people have to realize also on that particular piece of legislation, it's not automatic, and it doesn't really work for very egregious kinds of crimes, murder and so forth. But there are a lot of kids that get into trouble just because they're in the wrong place at the wrong time. And so that's another bill. In fact, in 2018, we did pass legislation. We had a very large criminal justice legislation that was passed. And in that legislation, for the very first time, there was a discussion about expungement. And so that was a beginning. And so now, I'm still working on that to have it more comprehensive than it is. And again, people, are fearful because they think, oh, well, how are you going to let these people, not have a record? Because if they get into trouble, you won't know. But I think what's important to understand is that it isn't automatic. There's a certain period of time you have to wait once you get out, if you are incarcerated, and then you go before a judge, and the judge, he has to make the final decision. So it's not automatic, but it opens it up a little bit for young people so that they can move on and get on with their lives. So the legislation is it's in front of the Judiciary Committee. You were at the hearing, Lucy, and it was a good hearing. And I think that, the big thing right now is the push really has to be to get that bill out of the committee. And we only have until February 2nd. And so that's really what we have to be thinking about. So I think, what your groups can do is write letters to the those of you who are really interested in the whole issue around raise the age, writing letters to the Judiciary Committee, to the Speaker's office. These things, I think that for them to know that you're out there, that the League of Women Voters is really interested in this legislation, I think is a really critical effort that could help. And it's, again, until February 2nd. February 2nd is the deadline for every committee that has bills that are still on the committee have to have them out by February 2nd. So they have to their choices. They can either put it into a study, or they can send it out to move to the next committee, or through the process of how a bill becomes a law. So this is a critical moment, and I think it'd be great to organize the your troops, to do some letter writing. And I think even individual letters, doesn't have to be long. Just a note saying we think the League is really interested in seeing this legislation go through. We really believe that giving young people a second chance is so important, and they get that second chance if they can stay within the juvenile system and not have to go into the adult system. And so those who are over the birth date of 18 go into the adult system, which is really hard to to fathom, and except the ones that are already in there can get to stay until they're 22. And again, we're talking about kids who, haven't done something totally egregious, like a murder. We're talking about kids that have done stupid things, that really with the right education, training, support, whatever gets offered, and that they can avail themselves of it. And it takes a while. And I mean, there's so cute things that you see. I'll never forget one situation where there was a young boy who had been in, I think, for a little bit of time in this lockup situation. And when we visited, he was pressing his pants by putting them under his mattress so that he would look nice when his parents came for Thanksgiving, the little Thanksgiving dinner that they would, that they had in the lockup situation. Yeah, I mean, it was just heart-wrenching, but that he was thinking that way, and that he would have, building a relationship back with the parents. And there's just a lot of needs and lots of supports and a lot of work that has to get done, but it gives kids a fighting chance, I think, if they have that opportunity. And if they can finish their education, that can make a huge difference, I think. So I don't know how much time I have, but I'm happy to
I
stop
wanted
there.
to ask two questions.
Sure.
One was, when you were new to the House, who was the woman who handed you all this legislation?
Her name was Barbara Gray.
Oh, I remember Barbara. Yes,
Yeah.
she's a Republican.
Yes. Well, she was both. I think she was Republican. She started out as a Republican, but then she knew she wouldn't get in unless she was a Democrat. I don't know. She kind of went back and forth. I don't remember all the details, but yeah.
From Framingham or Natick? Which one?
She was in Framingham.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And then in Framingham, there's a women's prison in Framingham.
Yes.
It's called Framingham MCI, and it was in her district. So she spent a lot of time, and I used to go with her, go out to the prison. As legislators, you can go any time of day or night and walk right in, basically. And I used to go with her, and she was amazing. She would walk up to these women and say, "My name is Barbara. How are you? What's it like here? How are you doing?" And she was incredible. Yes. And very inspiring, and nothing held her back at all. Yes. And she did a great service for the women who come into this. And then I kind of took over, and I created a similar kind of task force, which is still in existence. And it's a task force that I put under the Caucus of Women Legislators. And it's a task force that really takes a look at the women who come into the criminal justice system. And there's some wonderful women. There's a woman who's a professor at Suffolk University who's written books about this, and we consult with her. And so we really, because my feeling was that the people that are really most affected by a woman going off to prison are the children. What happens to her children? And so it's yeah, so it's really been wonderful opportunity, and you feel like you have, you can make a difference, I think, in people's lives.
Okay, Representative, when somebody contacts you, what has the most effect on you? A little note saying, "Dear Kay, please work on X. Sincerely, yeah. Marcia."
Right, absolutely. Yeah. No, I think it's just been, again, I've, coming into all of this as a psychiatric nurse, as a mother, as a grandmother, I feel that I've been very lucky to have this opportunity to make a difference. And you folks are doing the same thing, through the League of Women Voters. I mean, I think you're passionate about what you believe in and all the wonderful things that the League is doing. So I'm grateful to hear that this is a top priority for all of you.
Okay, with that, Lucy, would you like to take it up from there and talk to our folks about the state group that works on priority legislation?
Sure. Just to let you know, Representative Khan, the expungement bill is also one of our criminal justice priorities. So we're advocating for that too. And if folks are interested, my colleague Nancy and I would be able to provide you with a template if you want to write to the chairs and members of the Judiciary Committee, if that would be helpful. And I can talk with
Yes.
Marcia about how to share that. Basically, I'm one of the volunteer legislative specialists. My area is criminal justice and courts. And we're in formal coalition with the Massachusetts Coalition for Juvenile Justice, which is convened by the organization which Representative Khan mentioned, Citizens for Juvenile Justice. Again, I just want to thank this local league for holding this event and for prioritizing this. One thing I just wanted to highlight from the way Representative Khan has talked about this bill is that a lot of the young people who are involved with juvenile justice are oftentimes cross-involved with Department of Children and Family Services and other programs where they are already able to receive services up until the age of 22. So this bill would actually put some of our criminal justice system more in line with those other systems that the state has. One other quick note about how I got involved with this work and how I know Representative Khan has been involved with this for many years is I actually ran a Girl Scout troop for moms who were in MCI Framingham many years ago, and met with Representative Khan's chief of staff several years ago after our troop ended about kind of ways to stay engaged at MCI Framingham. So I know you've been, and that was many years ago, so I know you've been really active and just as she said, the children, the young women and girls that we would take to the prison were really deeply impacted. For the relationship piece that Representative Khan highlighted is so important. The types of family connections that you can have in the youth facilities is really different than in the adult facilities. So I just really, she said it all very well. But
well, I would just add, I mean, that's so interesting about the Girl Scout piece, because we invited the Girl Scouts to come and talk about that. And I'm blocking on the name of the woman who was very active.
Oh, yeah. Jessica Raffi was the director of the program before we became in those days. And there used to be program, and we also went to South Middlesex. Mm-hmm. But it definitely is eye-opening to see what happened, what happens. And so that was a very important. I was very sad when that went away, because I can just tell you that when the children were brought out to visit their mothers, the one thing that would happen is that for some reason the girls that would come with their mothers, I don't know if they came with, I can't remember if they came with the mothers, but they would sit on the laps of the women, their own mothers, who were in the prison. And they would touch their hair, and really it was like a very warm exchange. Exactly. Whereas when a social worker would bring the kids out, it was very different. It didn't have the same kind of feeling. So we were allowed to bring juice and crackers for a snack, which is like unheard of in a prison. And one of the most touching moments, and again, I think this kind of goes with this bill in some ways, like some of the basic life skills that you might get in a youth facility. For a lot of the moms, some of them, it was the first time pouring juice and giving their daughter a snack, ever. So I think kind of restoring humanity to people. I think, which I think in so many of your bills, both the expungement and the raise the age is a big part of it. Right. Is getting over the dehumanization, and that's something we really tried to focus on with the moms and the daughters, was rebuilding the family connection, like you were talking about. What
happened with the program? Why did it end?
I don't want to get us off track from this important, but basically it was a funding issue. And it also just, there's a lot of working parts with getting consent for kids to come. And it's definitely something that I know people would be interested in restarting at some point. there's also been talk about doing Girl Scouts and DYS facilities.
Yes.
Because again, I think this kind of focusing on leadership skills and positive youth development, which is a big part of the DYS philosophy.
Right. Well, in fact, you'll be happy to know a couple things. One is that, so I was one of those people, and I think I got this from Barbara Ray, that wanted children to be able to stay with their moms in the prison, which used to happen years and years and years and years ago. But so I was pushing for that, and visited a prison in New York, actually, where that was actually happening. And it wasn't for every woman, but they had to kind of qualify. That, of course, never happened in Massachusetts, but what I did get to do, and working with, actually was with the Baker administration, was to get set up a camp, a day camp, so that kids could come for the day and spend the day with their mothers. So we had a couple of weekends in the summer where we were able to get the kids to be able to come out to spend the day instead of just in a visiting room. They got to spend the whole day. And again, it wasn't for every woman, but we had about 30 or 40 women who wanted to
Wonderful.
participate. Yeah, it was really good. But now with COVID, of course, we haven't been able to do it.
Ah.
And there's actually a lot of good stuff going on, because there's an interest now. Framingham is falling apart. And so they wanted to build another prison, and we're totally opposed to that. So there's a whole group of us working to make sure that doesn't happen, to do something else that you could have more of a community feeling for the women.
I want to go back to the beginning, the legislation of raising the age. You said you've tried to introduce this in years past.
Mhm.
And what are some of the obstacles that you faced? Either
Well,
one of you.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I think, just so you know, by the way, there's it's not just the Citizens for Juvenile Justice, but there are other pieces to this. And one of the things that we're actually, which is kind of exciting if it'll happen, is the Boston Celtics are interested in helping with this.
Oh,
Yeah, so we've been working
cool.
with them, and we're hoping to have something happen, that there'll be a big show that we need to be doing this. It's really it's the person that's the one that's really been opposed to doing any change is the head of the juvenile justice system, the judge, our judge, Judge Necknam. She's the one that doesn't want to do this, and so that's been the challenge, actually.
Because
it's hard to know for sure. I hear things, and
administrative issues.
it's more administrative kind of stuff, that's out there. So we're trying to just build the case and try to move it. And so I think that as many people that can weigh in, I think that's a good thing. And so hopefully, it took a long time. It took maybe 4 or even 6 years for me to move it from the 17th birthday to the 18th birthday. And so when it happened, but that was in 2013, but now it's time. And also there was a little bit more of a push from the federal government as well. They were saying that it's not right for kids to be going into the adult system, at 18, at 17. So that helped, to have the outside forces. But I don't know, this is, it's tricky. I think we might be able, hopefully we could even get to the 19th birthday, I think would be a big help. It's not the end, but it would be a big help. And then some people say, oh, why would you want to have kids that are, 20, 21, 22 in the same system with the juveniles? And actually, I had an opportunity to go with a group of leaders from Massachusetts to Germany. We were taken to Berlin to see what they were doing in Berlin around raising the age. And they had no problem with having older kids in with the younger kids. They just felt, it was more like a family system where you have, older kids and younger kids, and they all kind of, take care of each other. And so that's what they were doing in Germany in the juvenile system. And it was working out really well. So, we saw that example. And so, just have to keep fighting the good fight. That's 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 what we all try to do. And I'm grateful to all of you out there. And I'm really honored that you would invite me to come and to speak about this and to know that this is a big priority for the league is great.
I have rather a devil's advocate question to pose. What would happen if we had a Kyle Rittenhouse in Massachusetts under this law? Or could you posit?
He wouldn't be eligible for, if he had been convicted, he wouldn't be eligible for the.
Well, I'm thinking of, would he have fared better? Could you posit if he was under a juvenile possible sentencing, would he have received a sentence? I keep thinking there's this, what was he, 17 years old when he committed the murders? Certainly, I believe that there's some work to be done, but because of the lack of a sentence of any kind, there will be no work. So if you put somebody like that up for conviction in a juvenile system, how does that work? Or are people, our kids who commit murder, what happens to them?
Mm-hmm. Well, the kids who commit murder, they go to the adult system.
Right.
There's no juvenile system.
But then there's no hope of rehabilitation.
Right.
Basically.
I mean, if they go, it depends. And if they are, if it's a life sentence or if there's a possibility for parole, and there is more work going on around that, to make sure that there is a possibility of parole for, young people who get into a situation where they've murdered. And so instead of keeping them there forever, to try to figure out some other opportunities. So that has been happening. But the Carl Rittenhouse situation is very complex. Because they, in fact, I think all the videos that showed that it was self-defense. Even though that, I think that was the reality of it. He did murder these two people, but it was in self-defense, and they have the videos, I think, to show that. So I think he's under, who knows what'll happen, because there's so much anger about it. I think his life is going to be pretty difficult, is my guess.
Well, he's also celebrated by some people, so that is also an issue.
Right.
I'm sorry. I think Nancy, you wanted to ask a question, and I
think Elizabeth
interrupted you.
I did. I just, one thing is that it's terribly discouraging to me to listen to years and years and years and years and years of work on these things.
Right.
However, back to Marsha's original question, she asked you, what is the best way? What is it? Notes, phone calls, emails? What is it that makes the most impression on legislators on these things? I didn't quite get an answer, I didn't think.
Okay, so I would just say that, well, first of all, I often talk to the Newton people, and they know where I stand, and they don't have to write to me, but they can write to the committee. And you folks, every single one of you have a legislator, and it doesn't matter what city or town you're from. You all have legislators, both in the House and in the Senate. And so I would say sending a note to make sure that they have sponsored it, if they can sign on as a co-sponsor of these bills. Do you all have the numbers of the bills?
No, would you please give them to us?
Yeah, I can I'll put it in the chat if you want.
Good.
Yeah, okay. So you want to send a note, and the more personal the note, the better, I think. And you want to send it to your own legislators. So you need to find out who represents you. And I hope you all know who your own personal legislator is, both on the House side and on the Senate side. Because I don't, we're all so busy. We don't really look at we don't look at notes or things that are from people that are not in our own district. It's just timing, we just don't have the time to do that. So, so you want to make sure and if you don't know, you can go to wheredoivote.com and you plug in your address and it'll tell you who you are, who is your state representative and your state senator. So I would say that would be the first thing to do is
Yeah.
find out who represents you and send them a note, a personal note. Dear, you can send it by email. Everybody, nowadays email is a good way to do it because you have, not only do you have the person, but you also have staff. So the staff kind of looks over all the
Right.
emails that come in. So I would say that sending a note to your own legislators saying that you support these two bills. And I say two bills because one is House, one is Senate. And you hope that they are co-sponsors. You want to have their name, their name should be on the bills. And the legislators, they can go into an area where they can sign on to the actual bills. You want to make sure your legislators are supporting these two bills. I think that's number one. And then number two, I would say to send the same note to the chairs of the Judiciary Committee. So in this case, the chairs of the Judiciary Committees are Michael Day, and he's from
Stoneham, I believe.
Yeah, Stoneham, right. And then Jamie Eldridge is the senator, and he's from Acton, I think, that area.
Yep.
But the one that's the most important, I'm sure that Jamie Eldridge, I'm sure they're both supportive, actually.
I
But
thought Jamie was from Lexington.
no,
No, he's
Pat,
from-
no.
I don't know. The Senate's, it's much
it's
bigger.
moving.
So it might be a little bit of Lexington. I don't know. Offhand.
No, it's not. It's a
Okay.
great
Pat?
town. It's not Lexington. Lexington
Thank
was
you, Pat.
Nicolo and Cindy Friedman.
Right,
Okay,
right.
I just know I've heard him there.
And I would send a note to so I'd send the notes to your own senator, your own state representative, the chair of the Judiciary Committee, the two chairs, Michael Day and Jamie Eldridge. And I would send the same note to Karen Spilka, who's the Senate
Oh,
president.
yes.
And also Speaker Ron Mariano. Send the same note, just write one note and send it to all those places.
And we have templates for both asking for co-sponsors and for asking it to be reported favorably out of the Judiciary Committee.
Great.
And I put a link to the Raise the Age website in the chat, and it has a lot more, and this was put together by the coalition, and it has a lot more, like if you're looking for more information about the bill, including like fact sheets and research and things like that. And it also has a template for letters, but I can also share with you templates. And
That's
just so
great.
just so you know, the legislative action specialists, we've reached out to the judiciary co-chairs and the public about this bill and the other priorities we have that are in the judiciary. And then some of our bills are also that we're prioritizing are also in homeland security and public safety. So we've reached out to the chairs and we'll be reaching out to the individual committee members. So it'd be great to have more people.
I
Well,
wanted to say from personal
That's great.
from personal experience, I know a lot of people, members, citizens are concerned that when they call, I do a lot of calling. I pick up the phone and call my state rep all the time about everything. And
Who's your state rep?
my Paul McMurtry. And
I love
I
Paul.
I have never, ever, ever been quizzed or argued with or asked for a fine point. Never. But I think people are afraid that if they do that, they're going to have to be an expert on the issue.
Right.
And I don't think that would happen. That might happen to Lucy.
No,
And I
no,
know
yeah,
when
no,
I lobbied at the State House, I would get into, I could remember a former rep getting into a big argument, but you know, you don't have to know it all. And even if you don't know it, you can say, I'll get that answer for you.
Right.
Right, Kay? I mean, you don't think ill of somebody if they do that.
Right.
But I've never gotten an argument on the phone and very few arguments in person either.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
people listen they're very impressed that you take the time to do it.
Right. I see a question coming in.
The recidivism rate was one of them from Elizabeth.
What is the recidivism rate?
I know that,
no, I think she had a specific question to ask.
go for it, Elizabeth.
Also, apologies, Diana asked a question. I believe I accidentally sent the House and Senate bills for 2019 to 2020 versus 2021 to 2022, which is what Rep. Khan sent. My question about recidivism is, I see that the 18 to 20-year-old age has double the recidivism for like similar teens or similar age groups in the juvenile system. So when it's referencing similar ages in the juvenile system, are those individuals who were in the system because they went in when they were 16, 17 and are now 18 to 20 as they grew older in the juvenile system still?
Up to 22. They can stay in the juvenile system up to the age of 22.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, so they're receiving the services in juvenile versus folks who are entering the adult system.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, that's a good thing that they can stay until 22. And then also the staff is used to dealing with kids that age. That's why I think it's silly that we can't, you know, raise the actual age to 19th birthday at least, and try that out. And then maybe after that, you know, they might be willing to go a little bit further. But yeah, so I mean, again, I think kids should be able to stay in through their 18, you know, until they're 18, 19 at least. And so I know that I'm close to the district attorney from Middlesex County, and she's supportive of, she would be happy to support up to the 19th birthday. At least that's as far as she'll go at this point. But
But as Nancy said, how many years did it take you to raise it? 1 year.
I know, it took a long time. Yeah, it took at least 2 sessions to do that, maybe even 3.
Well,
Yeah.
if everybody on this Zoom can help you, maybe we'll shorten the time. Go for
Right.
it, Nancy.
But one other thing, you said that the major stumbling block is a judge. Does the legislature not, I mean, how does the legislature can't vote something in?
Well, you try to get everybody on board. I think that's, you know, that's what we try to do. And that's my understanding. I've spoken to this judge as well.
Okay.
She's the head of the juvenile judges. She's the
Okay.
chief judge.
So it would be hard to get the legislature on board if those people were not. Is that basically the
Yeah,
idea?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, but it's at the same time, it's really important to get this, to hear who's out there that's supporting.
Yeah.
You know, it's so even that information can get to the juvenile justice the chief justice of the juvenile system, of the juvenile court. And yeah, at the time when I got it to in 2013, when I got it to 18th birthday, somehow, as I recall, we must have had the juvenile judges on board. But yeah, so that's my understanding, is that she's not in favor, but I don't know really all the reasons why.
And
But it doesn't, to me, it doesn't make sense if we already have up to 22 kids
Right.
up to 22 there.
And RepCon is being modest, but the 2013 law raising it created a significant reduction in recidivism for the kids who were included in, or the young people who were included when you raised it to 18. So it, so it did make a difference and help reduce that really high rate for young adults when
Right.
it was raised. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the whole piece about education is so important, that they can get their education. And we do know that even the adults, if they get an education, we do know that if people coming out of prison have a bachelor's degree, the recidivism rate goes down to under 3% because they can get out and get jobs, and they've paid their time, and they can move on a little bit. So it's the education piece is critical. And I've one of the things that I think they try to do, and I'm a big advocate of, and that is to get the kids to, to connect with the community colleges. I think the community colleges can provide a great service to young people who are in the system, and because there are all kinds of things that you can do through the community colleges. You can get certificates in different trades, just many different many different opportunities, I think, through the community colleges. And even with the community colleges, a lot of young people, they finish 2 years and then they go on to higher education. So I think if you can really enlist kids to get their degrees, and part of the problem too is that many of these kids may have dyslexia, they may have learning disabilities, so they need the opportunity to get those addressed. A lot of kids don't go to school because they can't keep up, and many times it's because of serious learning disabilities.
I can speak to adults who are being educated. Ann and I visited with a friend who was incarcerated. And one time I went with a professor who said the discussion with our friend, who was an inmate, was probably the best conversation he'd had in months with any human. I mean, this guy was taking architecture courses and all kinds of things, and his brain was functioning at such a high level. And, he was somebody he was an adult, but he didn't have any of those opportunities as a kid.
Right.
So I think education is the key to whatever we're doing.
Right. And believe it or not, there are a lot of colleges in Massachusetts that are really going into the prisons now. MIT, I know, Emerson College, I don't know, there are Boston University, they're all going in. The professors go in and help with the education system. In fact, one of the things that I was able to do is to get some funding so that there could be someone under the Department of Corrections that would be a coordinator of this effort for the colleges and universities to go in. And the professors that go in, they love it. They really have contributed a lot, I think, in terms of interesting. And even those that are in there without any chance of parole, they participate, and they gives them something. And I think it can set an example even for their own families, their own children, if they've made this horrible mistake, but at least they're taking the time to get educated themselves. It helps them pass the time, I think.
I have been monopolizing the questions. Linda.
Yes, I was trying to write a chat, but I'm so bad at that. I can't even tell you. But I just saw in the news this evening about how the news reporter, and I forget which one it was, but they were advocating for training people in carpentry, plumbing, electricity, because those are all areas of work that we're losing people. We don't have enough of them.
Right.
And and I was just wondering if the juvenile system had looked into anything like that. And totally unrelated is my other question is MCI Framingham still open?
Yes, Framingham MCI is still open, but they're talking about closing it. And
Yeah.
they're even talking about building another prison for the women. And
Oh,
there's a whole
gosh.
group of us that are totally opposed to that.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot, there's legislation to put a moratorium on building a new prison for women.
Oh.
Because I just feel like there's so many other things that we
Okay.
could do with
Yes,
that money to provide more services, mental health services and substance services.
exactly,
and
exactly.
parenting, understanding what to do as a parent, and just a lot of things instead of spending a lot of money on building a new prison, because the numbers have gone down. When I first started working with Barbara Gray, there were probably 1,000 women on any given day. Now it's down to about maybe 200. It's got a lot of them. Some of them have gone back to the county jails, but the numbers have gone way down. And to spend a lot of money on building a new prison for what,
Yeah.
just to make
Yeah.
sense. So there is some legislation on that issue.
And also about the teaching the young people, having, like experienced plumbers, electricians, carpentry,
Yeah.
getting involved in those kind of opportunities.
Right.
Has the
I think they have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they have. I don't know specific information.
There are vocational programs in the
Yes.
Department of Youth Services programs, and limited in the adult, but more in the youth. One of the people who testified at the hearing kind of had done some research on the program.
Great.
Talked about that. Yeah.
And the last thing that I have to ask, it's what I'm concerned about, is that currently we know that facilities for these young people, we just don't have enough beds. And I know that we're trying to get this legislation passed, but in the meantime, what is our go-to going to be so that children and young adults won't be spending hours and days in emergency rooms?
Yeah, and that's a big issue, and it's not really about the beds. I think they seem to feel they have enough beds. The problem is that we don't have enough staff.
Oh, yes, okay.
That's a big issue.
And did I hear correctly that Children's Hospital has purchased the Franciscan Missionaries of Mary Hospital? And well, it's actually Franciscan Missionary Hospital and Rehab Center in Brighton, right across the street near St. Elizabeth's, that they've purchased it, and they're going to have a lot of adolescent beds there.
I don't know. I knew that they were actually looking at providing more beds. And so I didn't know where they were going to do that. So that could very well be where they're planning to do it. But I know that lots of children have been stuck. They call it boarding.
Yes.
In the emergency rooms. And in fact, I had a constituent that was, I think, at Children's for maybe 3 or 4 months because they couldn't find a bed. And so that's very important. So I was really pleased to know that they were going to be doing that.
Right. And I do have to say, I'm a retired nurse.
Oh.
So, and as a retired nurse, looking now on our healthcare systems, I find it strikingly obvious that there is not one area in nursing that mental health hasn't, or behavioral health hasn't entered into and touched. And it's just changed the whole face, and especially with COVID, because it just, and I don't know, it is a huge problem, but the only thing we can do is keep fighting and keep, carrying on so that, our people can get the help and care that they need. And I feel very fortunate to live in this state. I really do.
Well, it's nice to meet another nurse.
Yeah.
That's great.
There's
we're-
a couple of us here.
Oh, great.
You have others on the call.
That's great.
Kay, how much would you say these juvenile situations involve psychiatric issues?
I mean, I know that, for example, it has been, maybe it's even worse now, but I know that, for example, at MCI Framingham, the majority of the women have a open mental health case. So we were up in around 80% of the women, and it tends to happen. It's more dominant for women than it is for men. And that's the way it used to be. I don't know what the numbers are for the juveniles, but there's just so many different things. You have the mental health piece of it, but then you have the family dynamics. What kinds of families are these kids coming out of, where they're not getting the kind of care or support that they need. So I think there are just many different factors. So it's not just mental health, but also the situations that they're coming out of. And, when they're coming out of families where there's maybe a lot of substance use and also mental health issues, it's just a no-win situation for some of these kids. And so I'm a big believer in looking at even the younger kids to kind of start low. And I say that because I have a son who used to teach in the Boston public schools, and he used to say, and he was teaching in the elementary school first when he started out, and he used to say, you can tell the kids that are going to be the problem, in the future. You can already see it. And these are kids who are coming out of difficult situations, I think, and they're not getting the attention that they need. So I'm a big believer in the sort of mental health side of things. I think that we definitely need to look at that and to see what kinds of services are called for. And then also the folks that are disabled, there's a lot of disabilities out there, the whole issue around autism. And, these are situations where kids aren't fitting in. And so what happens, and how do you manage that population? And they get into trouble. It's very complex. I know I'm not answering your question, but I don't have the statistics, and somebody probably has. I don't know, maybe Lucy, I don't know, maybe you've looked at some of that in terms of those numbers of the data that's available.
Yeah, I know that I don't have the specific percentage for the juvenile justice system of how many people have been identified with a serious mental health issue. But I know the juvenile justice advisory group that was created by the 2018 criminal reform law just published a study on COVID and its impact on juvenile justice system. And they do talk about how there's a much higher rate of young people in general reporting feeling depressed, things like that, and that may be leading to some acting out, and also some of the financial insecurity due to the COVID may also relate to a rise in delinquent behavior, possibly.
Right.
I have monopolized a lot of the question time. So I want to ask the rest of you on this Zoom if you have questions, because we cannot keep our wonderful guests here forever. So yes, Virginia.
Just a point of clarification. I think that the SJC has said that a juvenile cannot get life without parole. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
That's
just
it's relatively new, I think.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I can't remember if it was 2017 or I used to know the date because the life without parole, ending life without parole is one of our other priority bills.
Right.
Yeah. I also wanted to ask Representative Khan if, and you probably have, seen the article in the Globe within maybe the past couple of weeks about the journalist who interviewed a man who was in prison for many years, and this man who was in prison felt that there was something bad inside him, that he was always going to be the way he was. And it started when this feeling about having something bad inside him started when he pulled a gun on his mother and almost shot his mother. Did you see that article?
I did see the article. It was a front page article. And
Yeah.
and I don't know whether I plowed through the whole thing. It was quite a long article. But yeah,
It was.
it was a very sad kind of story. And so I can't say that I spent time on it. So I don't have I'm not sure.
I wonder, as a psychiatric nurse and somebody who's involved with these juvenile issues, whether, do you think that's something that occurs with young people, that they just think they can't get out of being the way they are?
Well, I don't know, I didn't read the whole article, so I can't really speak to that. But what I do know is that schizophrenia, for example, happens around adolescence, late adolescence. So you can look and act pretty normally until you're maybe it's around 18, 19 that it can come out, that you begin to hear voices, or you have other senses, and so yeah, it's so I don't know if that was what was happening with him or not. I'll go back and read the article. You've simulated my interest in taking a look at it, but a lot of mental health stuff doesn't appear until around 18, 19. And it can, certainly impact your way of thinking and how you manage. And we've seen situations actually where the police don't know what to do. And in fact, we had a situation in Newton where there was a young man who was living in an apartment above one of the villages in Newton, and he must have, he said out loud that he had gone off his meds, and he went downstairs and he went into a shop. It was all in the paper. I don't know if you recall, but he went into a candy store actually, and the woman in the candy store, he came in and he had a knife, and he was and she, I don't know how she had the strength to manage to do, to manage this, but she did dial 911, and she did try to talk him down, and he wanted her to go with him up to his apartment, and she said she couldn't do that. And then the police arrived and they went up. He was gone by then, up to his apartment. And anyway, to make a long story short, he was killed by the police because he picked up, I think, something, and he was going to throw it, and then they shot him, and he was mentally ill. And he was managing. This is a case where I don't know if he'd had any criminal activity, but he was trying to manage his life, and he had a family that, were really upset, who really cared about him. And he probably did go off the medication that sort of sent him, into that kind of a situation. So, there's a lot to think about in terms of how you manage folks who have different disabilities. And in fact, today I testified on a bill that I'm a sponsor of, having to do with people with autism who get stopped by at a traffic light. They can get stopped and pulled over. And so the idea there is to train the police on how to manage and how to deal with people who are, have some kind of disability. And so the legislation, two pieces of legislation, actually. One is to have a police training, so that the police are more familiar with how to manage in difficult situations. And the other is on the bill that I testified on today, was to have something called a blue envelope in your car. It's optional. It's a choice you would make, and you'd have a blue envelope on the around the mirror in your car that would have your driver's license and a note about the fact that you are autistic, and to give the police a sense of, why this person might be behaving in the way they were behaving in terms of how they were driving. But there's so much that needs to happen, I think, around training. And in the case of the situation that I just mentioned, the police had a social worker with them, but they were afraid to take the social worker upstairs because they close quarters. And so I mean, so I think there was actually, I did see another article today, and I can't remember where I saw it, but it talked about how Massachusetts has a lower rate of homicides than any other state. And so what they talked about is what we try to do here. There's no one answer for all of what one needs to do, but different ways of approaching situations that are escalating. And how do you do that? And working with the community and the police department. And because everybody wants the same thing, but it's how do you get there? And so I think in Massachusetts, I think there's been a lot more sort of coming together of the communities and the police department, so that people are sort of working together on all of these issues, so that, in fact, the juveniles numbers have gone down as well. So we're not, I think we're making some progress. Obviously, it's not as much as we'd like to see, but I think we are making some progress.
Elizabeth, you have a question?
Yeah, referencing the stipulation that juveniles tried in an adult court cannot receive life without parole, is it a possibility that, of course, additionally trying to get these 18 to 20-year-olds tried in a juvenile system, could a tangential solution or path ever be looking at minors tried in the adult system and making extra stipulations regarding their sentencing, such as excluding life without parole, perhaps adding other more lenient options or sentencing options?
Again, it depends on the crime and the judge, obviously. So it's hard to say. I mean, I think that, again, what I've seen, for example, in the adult system, where people are able to participate in education. So, I mean, that can be, even for a person who gets, if there can't be life, if we can no longer have life without parole, then there are hopefully things that one can do, within the system that will, even though they're young and in the adult system, that we can, make it better for them in that system. And some people really feel that that's, instead of raise the age, let them go into the adult system, but provide more services for them while they're in the adult system. So that's another way of some people are looking at it. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, thank you.
Diana, you have a question?
Yeah, you just reminded me, I've been taking notes on all of this. Which league, I'm sorry, I'm ignorant. Which league is sponsoring this tonight?
We are the Westwood Walpole Dedham League.
Oh, okay.
WWD, it's a mouthful.
Yeah, Westwood Walpole. Okay. I'm interested in how likely it is that this legislation that we want to support is actually going to come to the floor and be voted on. Because what I understand is there's so many bills that the legislature tries to consider, but relatively speaking, very few that ultimately get passed. And then after 2 years, you have to start all over again. Mm-hmm. So what is the likelihood? Is this really, probably popular isn't the right word, but significant enough that you think it really is going to get reported out and totally voted on, or what's the likelihood?
Well, it's hard to say that about any bills that we do, and this bill has been around for a while, so it's not new. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of support for it. And I mean, it's just one of those things. I mean, I can give you an example. I was working on legislation I filed last session. And I mean, it was a new bill and I thought, oh my God, this is never going to happen. But, you know, you do the work and you educate everybody about it. And believe it or not, it passed at 4 o'clock in the morning on January 6th, 2021. It had to do with maternal justice and legislation that was wanting to set up a commission to look at why more Black women die during pregnancy versus white women. And so it became more interesting after all the racial justice stuff was coming to the forefront. So it made it, because it was the right place at the right time. So you just never know. It's a great question.
Yeah.
I
Could
wish
I
I had.
Yeah,
Sure.
Could I also ask to hone in a little bit more? What's the biggest hurdle to get the process going where there's the likelihood that it would end up being passed? Is it getting out of committee to either go to some kind of joint committee, or how would you explain this in terms of the process? You know, do you know what I'm asking? You know, kind of the major hurdle, because that, wherever that potential roadblock could be, is where the pressure should be applied.
Right. So I think the first goal is to get it out of the committee,
Right.
because it's always gone into study. So that's, we have 3 weeks essentially to try to hone in on getting, I think the more people that can weigh in, that helps. It's not necessarily going to be the be all and end all, but I mean, we will know on February 2nd whether the bill is going to go anyplace this session or not. So I think that is what I had said earlier is, sending notes now, which
But where would it go if it gets passed out of the committee? What's the next step?
Second reading, third reading.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it would go to the floor, and then the floor would send it to third reading. If it has any money in it, if there's a money piece to it, then it would go to Ways and Means before it would go to third reading.
And just to emphasize what Representative Khan is saying, the action right now is to make sure to encourage the committee to vote it favorably out of the judiciary for this particular bill, and also to get co-sponsors to show that there's wide support for the bill.
Right.
One thing that one of the reasons the league is involved in this realm, and one of the reasons people really love that we're involved, is we're a broad base of folks. And for legislators to know that a broad base of people care about this issue is really important. And that, we're watching, and we want reform of the system. So one thing I always say is we need to show that there's a broad base of people who care about these issues, and that we're holding the system accountable, as citizens. So I think part
Lucy,
of this, yeah.
if we go to, if I go to House 1826 right now, will I see if my rep is sponsoring it?
Yep. I
Okay.
can also look that up for you, but yep, you can see for each bill who the co-sponsors are.
And if he's
currently.
not, I say, why? No, I won't say anything nasty. I'll say, please sponsor it. I think.
So we actually created an action alert that we sent out in an action newsletter a few months ago, asking people to ask their legislators as co-sponsors. And it has all of that information in that. I had shared that with you, Marcia. We've already created something that you can send, and it shows you where to look up if your rep is already co-sponsored.
Can I ask
Diana?
something else from a league perspective? Like I, as an individual leaguer from Brookline, I could write, as you have recommended, write my legislator and senator and put my name, comma, League of Women Voters of Brookline, or do we need to get board approval in our local league to
No, so,
No.
just a quick technical point. This is state legislation. So, the State Board of Directors has already voted this, as
Right.
so you don't, so that supersedes your local board. You're actually taking action on a statewide thing, not your local league.
Okay, but I should
state position.
sign my name, comma, League of Women Voters, not just
You can let
Diana
them,
McClure
yeah.
Brooklyn, you know?
you can let them know you're a member of your local league
Okay.
or a leader in your local league. And again, you can let them know that this is a priority for the
Okay.
league.
All right,
What is,
You could say League of Women Voters Brookline.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
once in the past, I think it was on same-sex marriage, I was told, and it was also very helpful that I got my rabbi, and I also got another minister in town to call the state house, and that helped. So anybody of influence in your town, if you can bring them on board, especially, I know our rabbis are very concerned about juvenile justice. So, maybe a little reaching out would be a good thing.
Absolutely. I think the more people that can weigh in, the better. And especially in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That's the
Okay,
critical-
folks, you have your marching orders. Everybody got it? Salute off to Kay.
Thank you, Representative Kay.
thank you.
We have our marching orders, Kay. I think you did a very nice job. And Lucy, thanks for all your
Yes,
technical
that's great.
help. We can't thank you enough. And for those of you who have nothing to do on these cold days, sit down and compose your letters. And you can just copy and paste to all of these people we're supposed to send them to, or as I said, send them to people you know about who would care. Your priest, whatever.
If you'd like to receive a copy of the template, I put my colleagues and my email address in the chat. It's criminaljustice@lwvma.org. And that's a shared email that Nancy and I have, and we can send you that information, or if you want to talk about any of our priority bills, including this one in more depth.
Okay, so Kay, when do we celebrate? In February or when it passes?
Right. Well, I think the first celebration should be February, if we can get it out of the committee. That's going to be a huge, big step. And then we have a little bit of time to really figure out how to go from there. But I think it's great. I really appreciate the invitation, and I wanted to get Lucy. Maybe is your information still up?
Yeah, it's criminaljustice@lwvma.org.
Okay.
And
now, are you with the state? Are you on the state level?
Yeah, I'm my local league is Wellesley. But there's a group of us that volunteer at the state level in different areas. So my colleague Nancy is from Hingham, and she's working on these bills too.
Great. Well, that's great to know. I didn't know that. So
no, we'd love to connect and talk more. Yeah, definitely. We're also supporting the solitary confinement
great.
Omnibus bill, which has such a big mental health component.
Right. Absolutely. Well, that's great. Well, it's great to know you are out there, and you're the legislative expert.
Well, we're not the experts, but we try to learn from the experts.
That's great. That's really excellent. And really, I want to thank all of you for coming on this evening. And I learned something to know that the league is really supporting this. So that's just fantastic. And I will relay that message to James O'Day from Worcester. So if you're talking to Worcester folks, give him a shout out, because he's a great person to work with, and we've been at this for quite a long time. So I'm happy to share this with him as well.
It's going to be on our state webpage, so I hope everybody is happy with how they look. And if not, well, too bad.
It is the way it is.
I
You
didn't,
warned us.
I didn't ask your permission. Thanks a million, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Marcia.
Stay
you, Kay.
warm.